This Donald Trump supporting MAGA vet absolutely shuts down AOC in her BS argument, and she goes absolutely crazy.
1979, I began college. One of the jobs I had to work my way through college was as a carpenter. We restored historical buildings. To my amazement, you know what I discovered, Madam Chair? You know what these houses did not have that were built 100 years ago in cities in America? You know what they did not have, Commissioner? Locks. Locks. Now I ask you all, what happened to that country, man?
There is no discussion about gun violence in New York City without discussing the iron pipeline that is Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, Pennsylvania, and honorary mention to Ohio, where 70% of likely illegal trafficked guns found in New York City come from. There's no discussion about gun violence in Chicago without talking about Indiana, because the violence and the mothers that we have to comfort are losing children due to the guns and the carnage and the lawlessness unleashed by those states. I move on. Every week in recent memory, we have had at least one mass shooting. This is not normal. Not only is it not normal, it is internationally embarrassing and delegitimizing to the United States and the gun industry, then children, then houses of faith, then human beings. Let's talk about profit. In 2020, again, more than 45,000 Americans died by gunfire, reflecting an almost threefold increase from 2015. Are those statistics correct?
That's accurate.
So in your view, are you seeing a correlation between gun profits and gun deaths in the United States?
Yes.
For context, the NRA spent about $250 million in 2020 alone. That's more than twice the entire salary of Congress combined. In 1 year, lobbying against gun safety laws. There's also this discussion about anything but a gun, but that these are about violent people. But yet we aren't doing anything about addressing the actual root causes of misogyny, where 2/3 of mass shootings are connected to domestic violence, or the emergence of white supremacy radicalization, mass incarceration, and poverty, and the connections between that and mass shootings in our communities. I yield my time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
America's population, 140 million. 15 million American men came home from World War II with deep scars and significant skills. They bore the invisible wounds of war. And there was weapons everywhere. We'll talk about mental challenge. My father was one of those men who was a Navy pilot in World War II. He came back from the war and built his family. I'm the 7th of his 8 children. I was born in 1961. We had guns everywhere. There was virtually no regulation. Any child in the 50s could buy a weapon from any seller if Daddy sent them with the money. We didn't have mass shootings. It wasn't until 1968 in America that serial numbers were even required on weapons sold in this country. You order weapons through the Sears catalog by the mail. 1979, I began college. One of the jobs I had to work my way through college was as a carpenter. We restored historical buildings. To my amazement, you know what I discovered, Madam Chair? You know what these houses did not have that were built 100 years ago in cities in America? You know what they did not have, Commissioner? Locks. Locks. Now I ask you all, what happened to that country, man? A country where homes were built in cities with no locks. A country where guns were everywhere and virtually not regulated at all. Where millions of Americans, 14 million Americans came back. It's 11% of the population at the time after World War II, with incredible skills of war and weapons of war, as you called them, everywhere. But we didn't have mass shootings. And here we sit today, where an entire once proud Democratic Party is presenting unbelievably unconstitutional laws to press upon our nation, and we have a police commissioner that says he would go home to home and confiscate legally owned weapons.
When we get back to the old gun argument, it doesn't make any sense how they always point to the gun, but they don't ever point to the person that is holding the gun. I'll tell you what right now, more people die by cars every year than they do by guns, but nobody's talking about restricting cars for people. You're free to buy whatever car that you want as long as you have the financial means. Nobody's stopping you. But for guns, we have strict regulations, checks. There are steps that they have to follow in order to obtain that gun. Yes, there are some instances where people steal guns from their parents and then they go on a rampage or whatnot. But that has nothing to do with the gun. That has to do with the psychological well-being of the person that was holding that. If you ask me, the advent of social media has been very advantageous for a lot of people, but it also has a very big strain on society, especially when it comes to young minds that are not fully formed, and then they're using this technology. And there are some sickos out there who see some brutal school shooting, and they take inspiration from it because they think it's something to be admired. It's absolutely demented. The thing that we really need to focus on in this country is the mental health crisis. What's been going on with these kids? A lot of therapists, corporations, big government, they just want to throw dope and pills at kids and that'll fix their problems, rather than take full personal accountability, start going to the gym, start socializing more, going into clubs, going into groups. Because I really do think that a lot of these sociopaths who commit these violent actions are just so isolated, or they go into some Reddit subgroup and they start chatting with some other psychos, and it just eggs them on further. If you make a law saying that nobody can own any guns, will that stop a criminal from owning a gun? Absolutely not. They're going to get that one way or the other. It doesn't matter what legislation that you pass. The criminals don't follow your laws now. What makes you think, oh no guys, we really need to follow this one because we want to live in a safer society with no guns? Because make no mistake about it, if we ban guns nationwide, then the people who own the guns are the criminals, and then they could just run wild and no one's going to be able to stop them. The only people it hurts for the most part are legal gun owners, people who are trying to do the right thing. They're law-abiding citizens. Do you remember the one instance in the church where some maniac entered and he wanted to shoot every single person in that church? But it just so happened they were in a deep red state down in the south, and he was not having that, and he eliminated the threat instantly. That's what you need. That is a perfect example of why legal gun ownership is a savior to this country. The founding fathers were not dumb when they drafted the Constitution. And the reason that we have these guns is to protect against a rogue and a tyrannical government. They knew that when a government can do whatever the hell they want and the citizens have no course of action, then they are screwed. They are sheep to the slaughter. But by having these guns, it gives them a chance. It gives them an opportunity to fight back against oppression. Look at all the oppression happening in China. You think that would be happening if everybody had guns over there? Absolutely not. That is the biggest threat to the globalist agenda. The American gun owners are proud, and they will not bend the knee to these globalists. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on this down below. What do you think of the whole Second Amendment? Do you think that it needs to be altered, or do you think it is perfect the way that it is? Let me know. I'd love to know your thoughts. And if you enjoyed, make sure to smash like, comment, subscribe, and wish you guys nothing but the best. Till next time.